latest in our series of interviews for UK Cigar Scene, I'm delighted to welcome UK jazz heavyweight Ray Gelato. Welcome, Ray.
How are you?
I'm very good. Ray took, for those who don't know him, Ray took over from the late George Melly in his pre-Christmas residencies at Ronnie Scott's. He's had numerous TV appearances. He's appeared at Carnegie Hall. He's opened for Robbie Williams. He's played for the Queen at the Ritz. And to top it all, he was asked to play at Paul McCartney's wedding. So some spectacular gigs there, Ray.
We've done a few, yeah, and we still continue.
Still going strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. I looked on the gallery of your website as I was preparing for this, and I reckon about 30% of the pictures there feature you with a cigar. So you're obviously a big cigar man. You enjoy a cigar.
Well, very much so, and they're not just PR pictures. They're genuine pictures from us on the road and me sparking up.
Right.
Yeah, very much so. Very relaxing. One of my very few things I can do to actually relax and come down from the craziness of the music business.
Right. Well, let's talk a little about music to start with, and we'll move on to cigars. Was music something you did straight from school, from a young man, or? No,
it was always something we had around the house because my dad was and is a big fan and liked Sammy Davis and Sinatra and Dean Martin and all the rock and rollers of his youth, like Bill Haley and the Comets and Little Richard, Fats Domino. So when I was growing up, we had that around the house, and I loved the saxophone solos on all those rock and roll records, so it inspired me to play. But it was something I took up quite late. I think I was 17 or 18 before I even held an instrument,
Right.
And took to it pretty quick.
Brilliant. And so, what your key influences come from your father?
The early ones, but when I got into the saxophone and started to go to, I went to night school to study and also took private lessons. I discovered a lot of the jazz greats till talking to some of the fellow students there and the teachers, people like Stan Getz and Dexter Gordon and all the greats of the saxophone, Lester Young, and they still my heroes today, those fantastic people, Louis Armstrong, so I'm become a bit of a musical historian, about where it all came from and how it all came together,
Excellent. And any one particular person you'd follow as a saxophone player, or you got multiple influences?
No, there's multiple. The greats, starting from the greats like Coleman Hawkins, right the way down to some of the rhythm and blues players on those Fats Domino records that I heard as a kid, those New Orleans guys. There's so many to mention. Most of the guys I've just mentioned, really,
It's a great thing to play music to your kids.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's really funny. I was with my daughter last night, and she's playing back music that we've been playing to her since she was since birthday parties, and it's just ingrained now.
It gets ingrained in you, and I was very lucky as a kid that my dad and mum took me to see concerts, and a lot of them were pop concerts of the day, which would have been in the mid-60s, and I was a tiny kid, but we did see Bill Haley and the Comets.
Wow.
We saw Fats Domino, we saw Gene Vincent. I'm talking all these 50s people, not Sinatra or anything like that. That was later. But that must have been ingrained in me, those live bands, and it was probably something that I had to do.
Right. Were you ever going to be anything other than a musician?
I left school with no qualifications apart from an O-level in art. I wanted to get out of school, I had enough. And I was a painter and decorator for Kensington Council, and I knew that was certainly not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
So I used my apprentice wage to take private lessons on the saxophone.
Got it.
I used to study.
Got it. And you've played. I know I talked about some of the venues you played. That Christmas residency at Ronnie Scott's. That must be a great thing to do in the run-up.
It's a great thrill, Nick, and we've done the 13th year, I think, in 2014. We started off doing the first week in January, which was the worst week. It took me 15 years to get in that club. I used to stand in the foyer waiting for Pete King, who was Ronnie's partner.
Right.
And he used to always give me the runaround, and eventually he said, "All right, son, come and do the week in January." It was the worst week you could ever do after the New Year and Christmas. But we proved ourselves. We did business, you see.
Right.
And consequently, then he booked me to support George Melly.
Right.
And when George died, they gave us the top spot, which we've still got.
Brilliant. So and things have changed round now a bit. There's a bit while since I've been to Ronnie's, but there's not the last thing at night set, is there? I remember coming out of there at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
there still
is.
Play?
there still is. They've rejiggled it a little bit, but there is the late set where what that gives young musicians a chance to get up and play, like a jam session. So yes, that's very much in existence. But yeah, they have changed around, and you know, the old guard when Ronnie and Pete were there was a very different thing. But now it's equally as good, but it's just in a different way. It's evolved in a different way.
Yeah, but it's still the most fantastic place to sit and watch music with those little lamps in front of you.
It's a throwback to a different time, and a kind of elegant time, and I love that supper club vibe. I wish there was more of those places to play.
Yeah, a nice size, and also a very, I'm sure it still is, a very good audience. No one talks. It's always...
Well, at Christmas they can talk. You can get a few libated characters in there. But I know how to handle them. You know, I've been around for a long time, so you're just very polite. But it's I kind of like people talking a little bit when we play, because it's not what I call a modern jazz thing. It's a fun, what I call more of a swing show from that sort of era where people did have more of a laugh. You know,
so a bit of a bubble of conversation helps it along.
It does, as long as you don't get anybody shouting too much, but if they do, I'll politely tell them to shut up.
But then, I mean, to play somewhere like Carnegie Hall, that must be fantastic. What are some of the top venues you can think of that you've
that
enjoyed?
One you just mentioned, Carnegie Hall was for an Italian company, and I think they could have been a little dubious, if you know what I mean, in the way of. But they were very nice to us, New York Italians. They were very nice to us. We got introduced to Uncle Dino, who was very nice, and it was a fantastic thrill to play them. We were on the bill with Roberta Flack and Lionel Hampton. The old swing band leader Lionel Hampton still around, and Ray Charles was supposed to be on the show, somehow for some reason pulled out. So it was an incredible experience. But we've played many beautiful venues. You know, I've done the Albert Hall supporting Robbie Williams, which was fun, and I still continue to do nice venues. You know, good jazz festivals and what have you. You know.
Lovely. And I know we're talking a little about. I know you was a very dapper gent. Clothes are important to you too, aren't they? You're always.
Well, they are, because you know the era of music I like. Everybody used to dress smart, you know, and I don't go back to the past to recreate it. I put my own stamp on that kind of thing, and elegance on stage and off is very much part of it. You know, I like to get my suits handmade. I've got a few different tailors I go to, and it's just very much part of who I am and what I believe in, you know.
Lovely. Yeah, it's nothing better than a really nice handmade suit.
Oh no, it's the best you can, you know, fantastic, and there's some great tailors around as well.
Yeah, the old school.
Absolutely, and I use a few different ones just for different styles and different ideas. I don't stick to one person. I think at the moment I've got 3 on the go that I use, you know? Not all at once.
No, understood.
Can't afford that.
But there's another side to your character too. We didn't talk about earlier, but you're a food man too. You're a cook, and does that come again from your sort of Italian heritage, or?
Well, you know, Italian Jewish heritage, because my mum's Jewish, and my grandmother was a fantastic cook. So I grew up with always homemade food, you know, and my father used to cook as well, spaghetti and meatballs, whatever. The very classic kind of things. But really, my passion for food came from travels, you know, especially traveling to Italy and tasting these incredible things in Sicily and Naples, and then going home and trying to recreate them, you know? And I've never really looked at too many recipes. I've sort of jiggled it around myself and asked questions when I've been over there, you know.
So that's my friends' way to work, isn't it? That's a great way to work.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing is that in London, and places in Soho and places like that, there are just still traditional old stores. Places like I love Lena stores.
That's right.
Where you can get the ingredients and
and Camisa. There's 2 of them. Yeah, you can.
Yes.
You can. But you know, if I go to Italy or Sicily, I will bring back stuff as well. You know, like the meats and the prosciutto and the bresaola. It's incredible. You know. Yeah, very big passion of mine.
Excellent. And you see, but you've appeared on TV cooking.
I can't remember the show, but I was on. There was a show in the afternoons, I can't remember what it was, and I was on that doing the jambalaya and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Jambalaya, wow, that's quite a construction, isn't it?
New Orleans, I love American food, and I love New Orleans cookery, and I'm trying to perfect that a little bit. Yeah, the jambalaya is a real speciality of mine. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little about cigars. Do you remember your first cigar? Can you remember where you started off?
My first cigar was probably a cheapie with my dad, because he used to smoke the cheapie Henry Wintermans and those, which are not the best, but probably
we all
when I
started somewhere like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Probably as a teenager I had one of his, but I really got into cigars when I lived in Florida in 2000, and I think I got into cigars there because we lived opposite a cigar shop, you see. So I'd go and try them out, and I found it was so enjoyable,
Yeah, it's a great thing. I mean, imagine you found some great spots for a cigar when you've been touring too, haven't you?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, when I lived in Orlando, and we lived opposite a cigar store called Arts, and they would do, obviously you couldn't get the Cubans, but you'd get fantastic Honduran and Nicaraguans, the Gloria Cubanas and the CAOs, and I really got into them there, and they were cheap as well.
Yeah.
But especially when I've been abroad, I love it, and there's a great. I love smoking in New York. Smoking a cigar in New York is amazing for me. I found a place called NYC Cigars in Hell's Kitchen.
Right.
And they do these wonderful hand-rolled cigars, and they're huge, absolutely fantastic. And I'll sit outside with a beer and just watch the world go by, watch all the characters of that Bowery, which used to be a bad area, but it's obviously come up now.
Yeah.
And that's a great pleasure of mine,
But you meet interesting people too, don't you? I've always find that when you've got a cigar and you sit down, how often do you actually talk to someone about what they do or what their job? You end up talking cigars, don't you? And it's a leveler.
You absolutely do, and I say, just using this New York place as an example, you go in there and there's these guys playing chess that you've never met and smoking. And one guy I can't remember his name, but he was a boxer that was a contender against Larry Holmes. Who sits in there, and we talk cigars and music when I go in there.
Yeah.
Now they know me as the English guy. English guys here,
So you've got your own cigar store in New York.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. And if we think about the music industry, are many musicians, many of your contemporary musicians, are they cigar men as well?
I think they are. Not really in the UK so much. There's a few of us in the UK. There's an Italian friend of mine called Lenny Lawrence that likes to smoke, and Leo Green, who played sax with Van Morrison, who's a big cigar fan, and a few guys on the peripheries of the business, like agents and managers.
Right.
America, a lot of the jazz musicians smoke cigars, and I've seen them when I've been on the road smoking cigars. Great bass player called Christian McBride, great jazz bass player, is a cigar fan, and I do believe people in the rock and roll industry like cigars as well. So yeah, definitely.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Well, I know. Jules Holland's a big cigar man, isn't he?
Indeed, he is, and I've seen him outside here quite a few times. Yeah, I've had a big chat. I've never smoked with him, but I've had a chat with him, and I've been on his radio show and what have you.
So I often think about. I've got a friend who's a musician, Andy. You might have met. Who smokes.
I do know him. Very another dapper gentleman with a hand on the
That's right. Yeah. And I know he's a busy working musician, but he also gets a lot of downtime, so it must be something that you can enjoy, actually just sit and enjoy a cigar when you're between gigs, I expect.
Well, that's probably the best time for me, because, as any working person, our lives are hectic and travelling is hectic, and it takes it out of you travelling. It's very hard, it's strenuous. So when I get back, I do my business in the morning, and I'll very often come up into town, smoke a cigar, take my phone out and do my emails on my business, and that's my routine. That's the best way I can relax.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's the lovely thing. There are so many great places.
Yes.
In London now.
Yes.
We're so lucky to have the dispensation to be able to sample a cigar.
Absolutely.
In a nice place like this, or Casa, or places. There are lots of nice places. And I don't know about you, but I always meet interesting people.
Without a doubt, I've met very good friends, as you mentioned, Andy, and then there's loads of characters that smoke cigars in here, the Dunhill, and also in Casa, and I've met great friends. And sometimes sometimes I like to be alone, but it's also nice to have company sometimes, and you can always go in and meet somebody.
Yes.
Whether it's here or Casa or Boysdale. I play Boysdale once in a while in Canary Wharf, and also in Belgravia.
Right.
But I do miss the Belgravia place when you could actually smoke the cigars inside.
Yeah.
I used to love that. It would add to the whole atmosphere.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's right.
And I think it's a real shame why you can't, you know.
Yeah.
Because you sit up there sometimes and it's with the blanket on.
Yeah,
on
it's
the terrace,
lovely
it's cold.
in the summer.
Yeah.
Really nice in the summer, so we're very lucky now. But it's very sort of 3 or 4 months when you can really know that you can sit outside and enjoy a cigar. The rest of the year we're sitting outside freezing
with
sometimes.
the check tartan blankets on.
Yeah, that's right.
Bless them, they've done it. They've done it. They found a way around it, which is nice. But yes, London is a fantastic place for cigars.
And the thing is that other places are now sort of in the position where they're investing a little and they're putting better heating and things like that in place. So you know things are improving. So excellent. So let's just we're going to finish off now with the final 3 questions. So the standard questions we finished with. So where would you say you most like to enjoy a cigar? Where's your favourite place to sit and enjoy?
I would probably say at home on my balcony. I've got a little period. It's a Victorian house that's somehow got a beautiful little balcony outside what used to be my office. It's now my son's bedroom.
Right.
But I go out there and that's my sanctuary because there's a park, we overlook a park.
Oh, lovely.
And I sit there, have a cigar, do a little bit of business, and that's probably my favourite place, my peaceful area.
Yeah. And no worries about smoking in the house or anything like that.
Exactly,
you're
no.
No hassles for that.
Lovely balcony with my vintage ashtray and you know, sometimes I'll put a little bit of jazz on or a little bit of music and it's my place.
Excellent. And when you're drinking, when you're smoking a cigar, what's your favourite thing to drink?
I would say
cigar?
a nice scotch, a nice good scotch, or I've just got into, I think we mentioned earlier, Nick, rum, nice Cuban rum, dark, rich rum.
Yeah.
Those 2 things unbeatable, but I would probably go for the scotch first of all.
I mean, scotch is great. The lovely thing is there's always something new to discover, isn't there? Talking about rums and things.
Absolutely.
You know, I've just started drinking rum a little more, and someone was saying the other day, you know, everybody's used to very specific rums, but now the whole rum industry is opening up, and there's a whole
very much so
range of new things that were never available to us.
And being in places like Kaz or here, you can speak to people and learn a little bit about these things as well. You know, because I'm not an expert by any means.
And there'll always be somebody who knows and who's willing to sit and chat over a cigar about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And if you had to pick just one really memorable cigar that you've smoked and enjoyed?
Well, you know, there's many, but if I had to pick one, there has been many beautiful experiences smoking cigars with fantastic people and great locations. But I would pick last week because I was in Ascona, which is Switzerland. The Italian Swiss is just over the border. And I had a white Churchill, beautiful white Churchill, overlooking this wonderful lake. And it was just the most fantastic experience, just watching the world go by in this incredible location. So that was probably my most memorable time.
Fantastic, lovely. Yeah, well, that's the great thing. There's always a new place to go and a new cigar to smoke.
Yes, absolutely. You know,
and discover somewhere new.
A new discovery with these things as well, because there's so many out there.
That's right. Yeah, always something new coming around the corner.
And a no-name one can be great. You know, I've had hand-rolled ones on Miami Beach, which have been among the best cigars I've ever smoked. Just fantastic cigars, fresh and gorgeous. You know.
No, a fresh cigar, straight off the bench, a day or a couple of days after it's been rolled, absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely.
And generally, if they're hand rolled like that, and they haven't gone through a press, I find them a cigar much more open and easier to draw.
And it's the ambience as well of being on Miami Beach, having the cigar rolled on Miami Beach. That's the thing that I really like. You know, it's just so lovely to do that.
Wonderful. And again, there's so many people from from Cuba sitting in Miami. No, just a short hop from Cuba.
Yeah.
Ray, that's been absolutely wonderful, delightful.
Thank you.
To hear all the stories. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure's mine. Thanks, Nick.
Her pretty little face, that face just knocks me off my feet. Her pretty little feet, she's really sweet, enough to eat, and she looks like an angel looks. Oh, she cooks like an angel cooks. And my mind's in a kind of world. To my mind, she's my kind of girl. Oh, my parts in a world. She's just my kind. She's a girl